Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a 2UZ-FE Non VVT-i. This is a left-hand drive obviously, and this is a manual harness. So let's get into it. Right, so as discussed, this is a 2UZ-FE Non VVT-i. This is from a Toyota Sequoia originally, 2002 to 2004 model. In this case, it's left-hand drive, because obviously Sequoias are all American, so they're left-hand drive. And in this case, the customer is not using the automatic gearbox, so it has been converted over to a manual via a remap in the ECU, as well as obviously the mobilizer removal, etc. This one is an adapted harness, so what we've done is we've taken the original harness from the customer, completely stripped it down, retaped it all up in specific engine bay tape. So what I'm going to do first of all is we just got a couple photos to show you the process that we go through, how we strip everything down. So we'll take a look at that and we'll be back in a second. Right, so as you can see, obviously we strip everything down, clean it all off, make sure everything is 100%, put it all back together, add in whatever we need to add in, and then we add the fuse box, remap the ECU, and she's ready to rock and roll. Right, so today we're going to be doing a few things. First, we're going to go through the layout, so we're going to go through the entire harness, tell you where everything goes so you know exactly what's happening there, and then what we'll do is we'll go through the plugs, the customer plugs that are relevant that you guys are going to install in the vehicle, or Pedro in this particular case. Once we've done that, then we'll come back and then we're going to test out the engine. So a couple of tests with just the key on, and obviously some tests with the engine running itself. So to start off with the layout, we're going to start right here at the ECU end, because that's nice and easy to start from, and we'll work our way up from there. So starting at the ECU itself, you'll see we've got 1, 2, 3 plugs over there. They then come along here into the harness over there. We've then got the two, what I refer to as body plugs on the ECU. So these are all the things that need providing from the vehicle itself. In this case, we are running that directly into our fuse box over there. Okay. Also coming out the fuse box is the stuff that goes inside the harness that needs powers, etc. from our fuse box setup that we have there. So most importantly, all the plugs that go into the fuse box are completely unique. So you don't have to worry about putting the wrong plug in the wrong place. You simply cannot do that. And then obviously we've got the two plugs coming out the fuse box, and those are the customer plugs that you need to connect on your side. Okay, so that's this section over here, really nice and simple. So we'll move along. You've got your grommet that goes in your firewall. We're going to come up along here, and it's going to break out at the back over here. Obviously it's going to go around the other side over there and along here over here. Now obviously we've taped this all up. This is how it came from the customer. But yeah, we'll go from this side first, and then we'll come back and go around there. So moving along here, we're going to have our first breakout over here, which then goes to injector 8 and coil 8. So remember, this is the right bank, so always looking from the back of the engine. And this has got 2, 4, 6, and 8. On the other side, we've got 1, 3, 5, and 7. So those are cylinder numbers over there. Also breaking out of here, you've got injector 6 and coil 6. So Pedro, what I noticed with the 2UZ is basically at these breakout points on both sides of the engine, you'll see that this one is much longer than these ones over here. It's the longer ones that go back to the cylinders at the back of the engine, and the shorter ones go to the cylinders at the front. So do bear that in mind when you are fitting this harness on. Obviously this is not a new build, so if you haven't labeled all the stuff over there, otherwise it would require removing all of the connectors and everything. Moving along, we have the second breakout over here, and that goes to injector 4 and coil 4 over there. So that's nice and simple. They're on their own, can't get those mixed up. Moving further along here, we're going to break out and we're going to go to injector 2 and coil 2. We're also going to break out to go to the coolant temperature sensor for the ECU itself. We're also going to break out to our gauge temp wire over here. So it's a wire that we give you guys, so you guys can fit a coolant temp sensor in here where you'd normally have a bolt, and you can run your own cluster or device that's going to be reading your coolant temperature. Also coming out of here, we have the plug for the throttle body over there. So you can see that plugs directly in there. So this is again similar to the 3UZ, but obviously the latest 6-speed model, it has one 6-pin plug over there. I think the earlier ones before 2002, they had the separate plugs on there. Okay, right. So again, nice little section popping out here, that is your mass airflow sensor plug. So that's going to pop in there and go over there. Now the sections that we've added in, so coming down over here, we then come down to the alternator plug. Okay, so again, that's on a sub harness like we usually do. Now in this case, this particular engine uses the 4-pin plug for the alternator. Okay, so obviously I've just adapted it to our 3-pin plug that comes on our 2UZ over here. Now this harness is quite happy to run a 3-pin plug as well. So if the Pedro, if you ever wanted to change the alternator and you had a couple of these lying around, just give us a shout. We'll supply a little sub harness with the 3-pin oval rather than the 4-pin on this particular setup. Okay, so that's that side over there. So what I'm going to do now is move over here before we go on the other side, because there's a couple of sections that pop out right here at the back. So moving along here, you'll see we've got the first pop out, which goes to our earth over there. So that's right over there. Then what pops out is a noise filter. So you see that plugs in there and it looks like it's got a clip in there. So I presume there's a clip on the back of the inlet manifold for that to sit in. For now, I'm just going to leave that over there. And then moving along here, we then have the lambda plug. So that plugs into the lambda sensor, which again goes into the exhaust manifold over there. Now in this case, with the 2UZ, the starter actual solenoid wire is not part of the engine harness. It actually forms part of the vehicle harness. So in this case, we've added in a 2-pin DTM plug with a loose pieces of wire that the customer can then attach to his starter solenoid wire that should be coming out from under the inlet manifold. All right. Last little section before I go to the other side is popping out over here, and that is the sub harness for the NOx sensors. All right, so again, they go under the inlet manifold. NOx sensors are on each side there, so that plugs directly into there, and obviously this harness is still in the customer's engine with the engine at the moment. Right, let's move over to the other side now, so we can get onto there. Right, so moving along down there, and then we have the other just down here. Sorry, let me get back. This is the other lambda sensor plug, so you can see that is over there. Okay, so that pops down into there to go to that lambda sensor on this side over here. And then over here we have another earth cable, which goes and bolts directly to the inlet manifold over there. Okay, right, and then moving along here, we're going to have the next breakout, and as the same as the other side, this has 4 sets of injectors and coils over here. So again, it's the longer wires that go to the back. So you'll see this nice long one over here makes its way back to injector 7, and the longer coil wire there goes to coil 7 over there. Then we have the shorter sections, and they go to injector 5 over there and coil 5 over there. Then moving along, we got breakouts to coil number 3 and injector number 3. And again, this does look a little bit weird, but obviously it's all different. In the 2UZ, they've got a much bigger intake, etc. But moving along there, then you'll see we've got injector 1 breaking out the front here and coil 1 over there. Okay. Obviously, there's no VVT on the 2UZ, so there's no connections for any of the stuff over here. So move along there, then it breaks out there and it goes to the cam sensor at the front of the engine. So that plugs directly in over there. Then it moves along there, and you can see there's 2 holes there where you would fit it. So you can clip it down over there. It breaks out over here and goes to the aircon plug, which will again go to your aircon pump, which will be sitting over here. It's going to break off, come down there, go down through there, and then about here it also breaks out and goes to your crank plug, or crank sensor plug, which is directly there. And then it also comes off and goes to your oil pressure switch. All right, so that is in your oil filter housing over there. Okay. Right, so that is the entire layout. So as I said, what we're going to do now is we are going to go and look at the wires in the customer plugs and explain those in detail exactly how they are connected. So we've got 2 plugs. We've got a 9-pin plug, which is that one over there. We've got a 6-pin plug, which is that one over there. Okay. What I'll do is I'll quickly start with a 9-pin plug because that's got the main wires in, and then we'll move over to the 6-pin plug. But the 6-pin plug only has 2 wires over there. Most of it's taken up by the OBD2 plug, so you can read live data and do diagnostics. So pin number 1, that's going to be a big red 14 gauge wire. That is a permanent 12 volt supply. Now that has to be a permanent 12 volt supply because that allows the ECU to retain all the diagnostic codes, all the type of long-term fuel trims that it does, etc., etc. So again, always connect that to permanent 12 volts so that you can retain all of that information. And obviously you want to retain those codes because if you're trying to do diagnostics, it's incredibly painful if the ECU keeps resetting itself every time you turn the key off. Right, so that's pin number 1. Pin number 2 is black with a yellow tracer. So that's this one over here. So you can see that's black with a yellow tracer over there. Right, that's your start signal. So that requires a 12-volt start signal. So you can get that either from your key barrel, if you're using a key barrel, or if you're using a button, just supply the button on one side with 12 volts and the other side goes to our black with the yellow tracer wire. Now, in this particular case, the ECU is actually controlling the starter. So you'll see when we start the engine, we actually only momentarily touch that wire to start to 12 volts. And the ECU takes over, and that's actually what's cranking the engine over in this particular case. That's not the case with obviously the 3UZs and the 1UZs and so on. Only the 2UZs seem to have that. Next up is number 3, which is yellow with a green. So that's that one over there. So again, that just connects directly to this wire over here. All right, so again, you can attach that to whatever temperature sensor you require for your gauge, whether you're using a standard vehicles gauge, whether you're using an aftermarket gauge. Just see what's going to work with your particular gauge, and you can fit that in over there. Number 4 is going to be gray, and that's a nice thick wire as well. I think that's 14 gauge or 16 gauge, and that is to take directly to your fuel pump. Now in this case, the ECU is controlling the fuel pump. So again, the same rules apply that with every other Toyota system. So I'll put a link up in the top exactly how that works, so you guys don't freak out, because I get a lot of calls asking about it doesn't prime. That's perfectly normal. That's exactly how a Toyota system should work. Okay. That's 4 is gray, 5 is yellow with a red. So that's that one over there, yellow with a red tracer. Now that's your check engine light. Now, just a quick note, like the 3UZ 6-speeds, this check engine light's not designed to work an incandescent bulb. So in other words, the older fashioned check engine lights, instead of using an LED for the light, they use an actual physical bulb. Now, what you'll notice is when we go to turn the ignition on, you're going to see that the check engine light's quite dim. That is the side effect of that. But you'll notice that my little LED in my fuse box is going to be super bright. So if you are fitting it into a dash that uses a proper bulb for the check engine light, swap one of those out for an LED and then it'll return to full brightness. Okay. Number 6 is yellow. So again, just a straight yellow wire, and that's also going here to our cluster along with the check engine light as well. And again, that's going to give our rev counter signal. So we're actually going to see the revs on the gauge over there when we start the engine up. Next up is number 7, and that's going to be a black with a red tracer. So hopefully you can see that over there, black with a red tracer. Now that is your ignition source. So that's the one you're going to take from your key barrel, and that's what's going to turn the whole system live. Okay. Now, if you are taking it from a key barrel, please note that the key barrels have 2 12-volt sources. They've got accessory and they've got ignition. Now, why is that important? Well, accessory gets its power cut when the vehicle key is moved to the start position. So if you connect that black with a red tracer wire to the accessory feed, what happens is as soon as you move the key to the start position, everything is going to shut down and the vehicle's not going to start. Okay. And it happens more than you think. So do double check behind your key barrel. If you are looking for the ignition 12 volts, make sure when you find it that you move the key to the start position and make sure that 12 volts stays and doesn't disappear. Okay. Right. So that is that one over there. The next one is number 8, which is pink with a blue. So that's going to my little device here because that is the alternator light. So in other words, your charge light. I'm taking it there because my little cluster here can only accept the alternate and oil light via MPX. So this little device is converting an analog signal to MPX so the cluster can pick it up. And lastly, number 9 is yellow with a black, and you can see that's alongside my pink with the blue, both going into the device, both then transmitting to the cluster. So hopefully we'll be able to see those lights come on when we turn the ignition on. Moving on to the 6-pin plug, again, super simple because most of it is taken up with your OBD2 plug. But the other one is a white with a blue tracer, and that is for your brake switch. So we do require you to connect to a source that's going to give 12 volts when your brakes are pressed. So bear that in mind. Next up is going to be a solid blue wire, and that is going to be your aircon. So what we've done is we've taken that, in this case for this particular customer, we've taken it directly to the aircon pump. That's going to then allow them to provide 12 volts to turn on the AC compressor clutch. But I must stress, and I will stress to everybody that we do this for, you must make sure that all the standard vehicle safeties in relation to the AAC compressor pump are in place and working, okay? If you run that pump when the pressure is too high or too low, obviously it can have catastrophic failure. So please make sure all these systems for AC are usually kept inside the vehicle, which is why we can do the AC no problem on the IS200 plug and plays, because obviously we have access to all of the wiring in the vehicle and we know it interfaces with the ECUs or the devices that we are using. For the rest of you guys, when you're doing this, please, I can't stress enough, make sure that all your safety systems for your AC compressor pump are in place and are working before you attempt to run the AC system. Okay, right, so that is that. Okay, that's the entire layout. Those are the two plugs explaining exactly how they work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop off. I'm going to get everything ready, connect the battery up so we can do the testing with the ignition on and the testing with the engine running itself. So bear with me a second and I will be back. Right guys, so now we're back and we're going to be doing the testing of the harness now. And as I said earlier, it's going to be made up of two sections. One is going to be with just the ignition on. So we're going to check a couple of things there. The other one's going to be with the actual engine running itself. So to start with, the bits we're going to test with just the ignition on is here on my list, and it's going to be the check engine light. So as I said, the check engine light on the fuse box over here is going to be nice and bright. On the dash cluster, it's going to be a little bit dim, and that's just the way that these ECUs work, as I just said before. Next up, we're going to be looking at the oil pressure light. So we want the red light to appear at the bottom over there, and same with the alternator light. The battery light's going to appear on the dash in red over there. Okay. Then we're going to move over to my OBD2 machine, which is again plugged into the harness over there. We're going to make sure that communicates and that we can see live data for that as well. Then we're going to test the fuel pump via the machine, because as I said, the fuel pump is controlled by the ECU in this particular case. And that's going to be all the testing that we're going to do with just the ignition on. Once we've done that, then we're going to move to actually starting the engine up. And what we're testing is the starter circuit. So as I said, in this particular case with this one, the starter is actually controlled by the ECU. So you're going to see I'm only going to momentarily touch that black with the yellow wire on 12 volts. And the engine ECU will take over and it'll fire the engine up. Then we're going to move over to the tach signal. So we're going to make sure we get a signal coming through on the dash over there. Then we're going to test the coolant temp. So again, we're going to make sure we're seeing some coolant temperature on the dash over there, which obviously at the moment is at 0. Then we're going to test the drive-by-wire. So again, I'm just going to press the pedal down like that. So you can see there's no cables or anything on. This is full drive-by-wire, and that would then cause that to work. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the engine one by one, cylinder by cylinder, removing the injectors one by one, so you can actually see that you get a misfire for every single one. Just a quick note, when I start the engine up, again, this is a 2UZ engine. It's a 4UZ harness, and it doesn't seem to like being on a smaller engine. So every now and again, you might hear a slight misfire. I'm presuming it's because the engine's way smaller than what the ECU is used to, and it may be overfueling a little bit, but just not to worry. The little hesitant misfire every now and again, nothing wrong with it. You'll see when I pull the injectors out, it's going to misfire properly every single time. Then lastly, we're going to come over to the machine again and make sure we've got no code. So again, when we start it up, you're going to see the check engine light's going to disappear. And obviously we'll go into the machine and make sure we've got no codes. So again, we've remapped it so that all the automatic gearbox codes are gone, the immobilizer's gone, everything is there, and it's ready to rock and roll for a manual application. Okay, so to start the testing with just the ignition on, all I'm going to do is take my red with a black tracer wire, and I'm going to give that 12 volts. So give me a second while I do that. And again, you can hear all the relays kicking in. So again, we want to look at the check engine lights. As I said, the check engine light's nice and bright on our fuse box over there, because that's just an LED. It is appearing on the dash over there, but you can see compared to that light, it is a little bit dim. And again, I did explain all of that in the beginning. All right. So now that I've done that, next thing we want to do is the oil pressure light. And we can see the oil pressure light has come up over there. And again, when we start it up, we want that to go off. And alternator light, again, that is popping up right over there. So again, that should go out as soon as we start it up. Right, moving over to the OBD2 machine. I have already connected it because these things take absolutely ages. But what I'm going to do is, you can already see we've got some live data over there. I'm just going to go into function, system select, and you'll see here that we're picking up as a Sequoia. Okay, so that's absolutely fine. So what we'll move on to now is testing the fuel pump out. So again, earlier on in the video, I did put a link on how Toyota and Lexus fuel pump systems work, depending on their setup. So again, if you are unsure, please watch that video and it'll tell you exactly how it works. It also explains about the fuel pump relay, which can be confusing on these because you've got fuel pump and fuel pump relay. But again, in that video, it explains everything there for you. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flick the button and you're going to hear the fuel pump relay kick in. And hopefully you can hear in the corner there, our little fuel pump is whizzing away over there. Alrighty, so I'm super happy with that. So I know the ECU is controlling the fuel pump. Everything is gravy there. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move over to the starting of the engine. So I'm going to put my ear defenders on because it is very loud. Once I do that, again, as I said, this is ECU controlled for the starter. So this actually is just supplying a signal to the ECU to tell it to start the engine. Okay, so let me put my ear defenders on. All right, so again, I'm taking my black with a yellow wire. I'm just going to provide it briefly with 12 volts. There you go, the engine fires up, ECU's taking care of that. So we see our starter. We can see the oil light and the battery light have gone out. You can see we've got an RPM signal there. Okay, so that's all gravy. Then coolant temp, you can see that is climbing up over there, so we're happy with that connection, and we can see it's about 81 degrees, super happy with that. Drive-by-wire, obviously I've kind of already tested it. That's all working okay. Right, so let's go to the coils one by one. So we'll start here at number 8. Up at number 6. Then we'll go to number 4. Then we'll go in there to number 2. Okay, let's go over to the other side now. We've got number 7. Number 6. Sorry, number 7, number 5, number 3, and cylinder 1, the last one. Fantastic. Alrighty. And then last but not least, we can see check engine light has gone out, check engine light has gone out. And if we go into diagnostic trouble codes over here, and we see we've got 0 codes and 0 pending codes. Okie dokie. Shut that down. Okay, fantastic. Right, so everything is working exactly as we'd expect it to. Obviously, we've got drive-by-wires working. All the cylinders are firing as they should. Obviously, it's a little bit rich and burning my eyes because, again, it's a small engine and it's designed for a 4.7 litre V8, and I've probably got wrong size injectors on there. But anyway, it does work, it does run. All the cylinders are firing as they should. Drive-by-wire works, all the check engine light works, all of the oil and alternator light and coolant temperature works exactly as it should. So that's everything from our side. Again, so we'll get this off and get this to Pedro so that he can get his vehicle running. I know this one has taken a little bit longer than usual. It's one of the first ones we've remapped of the 2UZ ECUs. So we'll see how that goes, but obviously a lot of success with the 3UZ ones. But again, if you guys have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask. And also, while I'm here, just a little tidbit is these Sequoia mass airflow sensors are completely different from the 3UZ one. So bear that in mind, guys, and you cannot plug a 3UZ one in. It doesn't work at all. These are completely different. I had to order that one specially in for this harness. So yeah, so just keep that in mind when you are fitting it on there. If you've got a Sequoia, you need that type of mass airflow sensor, not the normal small ones you see on the 3UZs. All right, but thanks for watching, guys. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments below. You can get hold of us at Phoenix Engine Management on Facebook, or you can email us at info@phoenixenginemanagement.com. But guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life. I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, put your hand to the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light. Ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took a red pill, I know life's short so I wanna live real, but how is it supposed to